All right, well, welcome everyone to this first Saturday of the month of July, and we're starting a new devotion now at the farm. And actually, this was started by somebody. There's a family who had decided to move to the Bloomington area, and they were moving from, I guess it was upstate New York, so they were familiar with our friars in New York, and the friars there every first Saturday would have a procession of the statue of Our Lady and the first Saturday devotions. And the question was, do you do that at the farm? I said, oh, we better start doing that at the farm. So that's a great idea, that we had the May and October Marian days, and of course we had the Rosary on the first Saturday. So we certainly provided the conditions for fulfilling the devotion of the 5 first Saturdays, but it's nice to bump it up a notch in honor of Our Lady with a rosary outside, and we'll get to the point hopefully where we've got the statue in procession. Today's weather happens to be very nice, so we'll have the Mass outside, and we offer reflection too, now specifically on the apparitions at Fatima. So this is very important. The first Saturdays, Our Lady asked for the 5 first Saturdays in reparation for the offenses committed against her Immaculate Heart. And that was back in 1917 when the initial message came out about this devotion of the 5 first Saturdays. And then it was in 1925 that Our Lady then gave more specifics. The apparition in Pontevedra, Spain, to Sister Lucia, gave more specifics about the 5 first Saturdays, the conditions, and all of that. That was December 10th, 1925. So here we are 100 years later, right? And conditions have not improved. I would say they've gotten worse, with basically everybody acknowledging that we live in so-called post-Christian times. Okay, anybody who acknowledges, admits, observes that we live in post-Christian times, that's basically saying we've abandoned the faith. We've left the faith. Christian faith, that's something of the past. Okay, there are a few pious stragglers who are hanging on to that superstitious stuff, but we live in post-Christian times today. And that becomes very evident, right, in the laws that we see in our land, really we see it in the attacks against images of Our Lady, which is specifically one of the things we make reparation for, right? So these things are going on. Lack of faith and even hatred of God, right? Even hatred of God. Was down praying outside of the abortion clinic, Planned Parenthood in downtown Bloomington a few weeks ago, and somebody driving by, they cursed God and they cursed the babies. Okay? So that is hatred of God and hatred of humanity. That is exactly the opposite of what we're actually made for, right? We are made to love God. We are made to love our neighbor. And this person is doing exactly the opposite. That's going to be important for the July message. So I'm going to talk about the July message, which happens to be a very important message because it's the one in which Our Lady reveals the 3 secrets. The 3 secrets are, first, hell, the vision of hell. Second, regarding Russia. And third, the 3rd secret that was revealed in the year 2000, which is long and would require a conference or more in itself. So leading up to this July apparition, it started in May. There was also an apparition in June. So leading up to this, remember Our Lady asked the children, she said, will you accept all of the sufferings that God wants to send you? And the children said, yes, we do, or we will. And Our Lady said, then you will have much to suffer. Okay, and so the suffering has already begun. Okay, they're not even 2 months in. And look at the way divine providence sends these sufferings, right? One of them actually comes through Lucia's pastor, her priest. And we can say, not intentionally, right? The priest just said to Lucia, be careful, because it might be the devil who is appearing to you. That created untold suffering in the soul of Lucia, okay? And I would say probably unbeknownst to the pastor. Now, what the pastor said was true, right? We're talking about a 12-year-old girl, and you need to be cautious. You need to be careful. Nevertheless, these words really caused Lucia to struggle, and she had actually decided not to go to the Kolbe da Iria on July 13th. She told Jacinta that she wasn't going to go. Now, what happened was, on the day of July 13th, 1917, all of her fears, all of her anxieties left her. And so she decided to go. And so this is the way divine providence works, right? This is the way God works. He could have made those words of the priest go in one ear and out the other if he wanted to. But instead, that was a cause of temptation, doubt, and anxiety, fear, and all the rest. And then, when the day comes to go, because Our Lady wants her there, she removes it. This is a prayer of St. Maximilian Kolbe. He was totally consecrated to Our Lady, and he acknowledged that she was completely in charge of him, of his physical life, of his going and coming, of what his superiors told him to do, of his interior life, his emotional life, his thoughts and desires, and all of these things. He had given them all to Our Lady. And, of course, he would pray to have clarity of thought. Right? He would pray for good health. He would go to doctors. He went to Zakopane, the place in Poland high in the mountains, to relieve his suffering there. He did these things. But he also acknowledged, ultimately, Our Lady's in charge. She can take this away in a moment if she wants to. And she did that with Lucia. Why? Because that's what she wanted. Okay, Our Lady wanted her there, and so she creates the circumstances to enable Lucia to go there without any fear and without any anxiety. Now, we need to apply all of these things to our own selves. When Our Lady asks the children, will you accept all of the suffering that God wants to send you? We need to say yes, right? We should want to say yes, but we should also be aware of what that means. Okay? What might be coming down the pike? We don't know what Our Lady will ask of us. One priest used to describe total consecration to Our Lady as giving Our Lady a blank check with our lives. She can write whatever she wants on it. And so she ends up going with Jacinta and Francisco, and she writes this. A few moments after arriving at the Kolbe da Iria, near the Holm Oak, where a large number of people were praying the Rosary, okay? News has spread. There's already a large crowd. We saw the flash of light once more, and a moment later, Our Lady appeared on the Holm Oak. Okay, so remember, Lucia, she sees Our Lady, she hears what Our Lady says, she speaks with Our Lady. Jacinta, she sees Our Lady, she hears Our Lady, but she doesn't speak with Our Lady. Francisco, he sees Our Lady, he does not hear Our Lady, and he doesn't speak with Our Lady. That's indicative of different graces for different souls. Christ has ascended into heaven, and he gives gifts to men according to his good pleasure, according to the measure of Christ. Okay, so this refers to supernatural gifts, refers to vocations, it refers to natural gifts as well. Okay, health, intelligence, various skills, abilities, the supernatural, faith, hope, and charity are different vocations and everything. So we see that already with regard to the children. And Lucia says, "What do you want of me?" Again, that's a question we should ask Our Lady as well. If we're totally consecrated to her, we've given our lives to Our Lady, we want to know, what does she want from us? What is her will? What is it that pleases her? And Our Lady responds, "I want you to come here on the 13th of next month to continue to pray the Rosary every day in honor of Our Lady of the Rosary, in order to obtain peace for the world and the end of the war, because only she can help you." So Our Lady expresses her desire that she wants Lucia to come on the 13th of the next month and to continue to pray the Rosary every day in honor of Our Lady of the Rosary. Again, a message that we should all take to heart. Fidelity in praying the daily Rosary. Why? As Lucia explained, there does not exist a problem which cannot be solved by praying the Rosary. What does Our Lady promise here? She says, in order to obtain peace for the world and the end of the war. That's a big deal, right? Peace for the world, end to the war, right? This is World War I. Peace for the world, end to the war. Why or how? By praying the Rosary every day by a 12-year-old girl. So what can we accomplish? What are the things that we have need of in our lives, our spiritual lives, in our families, our extended families, co-workers, friends? What are our needs? Probably not as big as ending a war. Although I do remember one young man who came from a numerous family. I think there were 12 children in the family. The way he described his home life was, there's a war in every room. So maybe you do need to put an end to some wars, but the Rosary can do that too. But this is the point, right? There's not a problem that we can't solve by praying the Rosary every day, entrusted to Our Lady. Only she can help us. And the same can be said in our own times, right? Our Lady, our spiritual mother, only she can help us. Lucia responded, "I would like to ask you to tell us who you are and to work a miracle so that everybody will believe that you are appearing to us." So remember, as I mentioned, the children had various degrees of access to this apparition. Francisco being the least, just being able to see Our Lady. Well, the crowd of people who were there, they couldn't even see Our Lady. And so there were still doubters, scoffers, unbelievers, and all of that. And so Lucia asks for a miracle so that everybody will believe that you are appearing to us. We need miracles, don't we? And God knows this. And that's why it says at the end of St. Mark's Gospel that the apostles went forth and preached the word, and our Lord accompanied them with signs. okay? Signs to confirm the message that they were preaching. And so we find throughout the history of the church, there have been various miracles to confirm us, to strengthen us in the faith. And because Lucia saw the need for some sign to confirm that what was taking place is true, to confirm the message that would be received and communicated, she asks for a miracle. And Our Lady responds, "Continue to come here every month. In October, I will tell you who I am and what I want, and I will perform a miracle for all to see and believe." Now that's a big deal, because here we have 3 children who are then prophesying a public miracle. Okay. Has it happened in the past history of the church? Perhaps it has, but nothing really comes to my memory. So striking as this, there were 70,000 people there present in October to see the miracle of the sun. And so Our Lady, she is good on her word. She says, "In October, I will tell you who I am and what I want, and I will perform a miracle." Sister Lucia says, "I then made some requests, but I cannot recall now just what they were. What I do remember is that Our Lady said it was necessary for such people to pray the Rosary in order to obtain these graces during the year." So the children, as they were walking around town and back and forth from the Kolbe area to their homes, the people would give them their petitions, to bring my son back from the war, to heal so-and-so from such and such sickness and all of that. And so Our Lady says that it is necessary for such people to pray the Rosary. Here we have the second exhortation to pray the Rosary. These people want these graces, they have these needs and desires. Pray the Rosary. This was also mentioned to Francisco. Okay, again, he could see Our Lady, couldn't hear her. And when Lucia asked if the children if they would go to heaven, Our Lady said yes, they would, but Francisco needed to pray many rosaries first. And so when he found that out, he threw his hands in the air and said, "I'll pray as many rosaries as Our Lady wants." See this open disposition of the children to respond to Our Lady's requests? That's what we all need, to be open and to be faithful in praying the Rosary. Our Lady continued, "Sacrifice yourselves for sinners, and say many times, especially whenever you make some sacrifice, 'O Jesus, it is for love of you, for the conversion of sinners, and in reparation for the sins committed against the Immaculate Heart of Mary.'" So these sacrifices involve both voluntary sacrifices, such as fasting. The children even denied themselves water. I don't recommend that. I don't think they were as aware back then as we are today about heat stroke and heat exhaustion and these type of things. That was probably imprudent on their part. So they did these type of voluntary sacrifices, but there are also the involuntary ones, right? And these are the ones chosen by Our Lady, the sufferings willed by God, like that one with the priest mentioning to Lucia about that it might be the devil, also being thrown in prison, and then later on illness and isolation for Jacinta, etc. These are all sacrifices. And so in our own lives, we want to have this mixture as well. Voluntary, and of course, God will send some involuntary ones. Now, the voluntary ones are usually easier because they're according to our own will. Okay, so there's already a certain satisfaction. in performing some voluntary sacrifice. Normally, the involuntary ones are more difficult, the ones that God sends. And so when these do come our way, let's not view them with a merely natural viewpoint. Okay, if we view these things just from a natural viewpoint, well, we're very easily going to become impatient and angry and frustrated. Okay, all of these things. Why? Well, because we want and hope for and expect things to go smoothly in our lives. Okay? God doesn't always want things to go smoothly. And so he allows for difficult circumstances, difficult people, failures, whatever it may be, that we didn't choose, that we were doing our best to avoid. But we need to have the eyes of faith that if it's not under our control, okay, then it is 100%. This is what St. Maximilian teaches, and this is really what the faith is. Then it's 100% God's will for you, here and now. And so if we have that supernatural vision, okay, the eyes of faith to see God's loving hand in all of the events in our life, a whole lot easier to remain patient, to remain kind, and even to be joyful in life's difficulties when things go awry. And then when these sacrifices come our way, we can also pray this prayer. O Jesus, it is for love of you, for the conversion of sinners, and in reparation for the sins committed against the Immaculate Heart of Mary. As Our Lady spoke these last words, she opened her hands once more, as she had done during the previous 2 months. The rays of light seemed to penetrate the earth. So the previous 2 months, the children were enveloped in these rays of light, which they actually said was God. Okay, they were enveloped in God's presence. Instead, this time, the rays of light penetrate the earth, and we saw, as it were, a sea of fire. Plunged in this fire were demons and souls in human form, like transparent burning embers, all blackened and burnished bronze, floating about in the conflagration, now raised into the air by the flames that issued from within themselves, together with great clouds of smoke, now falling back on every side like sparks in huge fires, without weight or equilibrium, amid shrieks and groans of pain and despair, which horrified us and made us tremble with fear. It must have been this sight which caused me to cry out, as people say they heard me. The demons could be distinguished by their terrifying and repellent likeness to frightful and unknown animals, black and transparent like burning coals. Terrified, and as if to plead for help, we looked up at Our Lady, who said to us so kindly and so sadly, "You have seen hell, where the souls of poor sinners go. To save them, God wishes to establish in the world devotion to my Immaculate Heart. If what I say to you is done, many souls will be saved and there will be peace. The war is going to end, but if people do not cease offending God, a worse one will break out during the pontificate of Pius XI. When you see a night illumined by an unknown light, know that this is the great sign given you by God, that he is about to punish the world for its crimes, by means of war, famine, and persecutions of the Church and of the Holy Father. To prevent this, I shall come to ask for the consecration of Russia to my Immaculate Heart, and the communion of reparation on the first Saturdays. If my requests are heeded, Russia will be converted, and there will be peace. If not, she will spread her errors throughout the world, causing wars and persecutions of the Church. The good will be martyred. The Holy Father will have much to suffer. Various nations will be annihilated. In the end, my Immaculate Heart will triumph. The Holy Father will consecrate Russia to me, and she will be converted, and a period of peace will be granted to the world. In Portugal, the dogma of the faith will always be preserved, etc. Do not tell this to anybody. Francisco, yes, you may tell him. When you pray the Rosary, say after each mystery, O my Jesus, forgive us, save us from the fire of hell, lead all souls to heaven, especially those who are most in need. After this, there was a moment of silence, and then I asked, Is there anything more that you want of me? No, I do not want anything more of you today. Then, as before, Our Lady began to ascend towards the east, until she finally disappeared in the immense distance of the firmament. So that completes the message, the apparition message of July 13th. Obviously, there is enough for 2 more conferences in what's included in the rest of the message. But look at this vision of hell that Our Lady shows the children. There's a lot to consider right in that. First of all, this is the Mother of God and the Mother of the Church, who is showing 3 young children a vision of hell. Okay, some might have thought, that's inappropriate. They're not ready for that. Okay? But Our Lady knew otherwise. In fact, this made such an impression on them that it transformed them. The same meditation should transform the Christian soul, right? Should transform us. Think about that. If we have compassion for somebody who is enduring some suffering in this world, and we should have compassion, if they're sick, if they've lost a loved one, or something something else, we should have compassion. We should want to console them. All right? Here we have unimaginable suffering. It is never going to end. This is something Jacinta used to approach Lucia about over and over again. You mean after many, many years, they never get out? And Lucia would respond, no, it's forever. It's eternal. Somebody suffering the loss of a loved one. Okay, these souls are suffering from the loss of God. Okay. The one whom we should love above all things, whom we're made to love above all things, the only one who can satisfy the desires of our hearts. They've lost that. Okay? They're separated from God, and that actually covers the 2 pains of hell. Okay? The pain of the senses and the pain of loss. And so here we see the fire, the shrieks, the despair. Now think about that man who drove by me at the abortion clinic, cursing God, cursing the babies. He hates God. He hates humanity. Okay? This is real. Okay, this is real. And it is real that souls are in danger. They're still alive. They're still out there in this world. But they need prayers and they need sacrifices to prevent a bad end. And this is exactly what Our Lady is asking of those of us who have faith, right? Who have faith, who pray and receive the sacraments. We need to do what we can to save souls, to introduce them to Our Lady, to devotion to her Immaculate Heart. That's what can change and save souls.